Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chai Together. I am your host and founder, Pratibha Day. You are tuning in for your cup of courage, hope, and imagination today. We use courage to showcase the stories on this platform. We use hope to overcome, and we use imagination to resonate and understand with the stories that are being shared. So, with that being said, I'd like to welcome Mr. Mike.
Iamele. It's
Iamele.
a
I
tough
did
one.
say
It's
it
a
right.
tough one. You got it.
I
See,
had
you
to
got it.
pause because I was like, hold on.
It's a
Aw.
tough one.
Yeah. So, you feeling good?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, thank you for having me here. Morning is like my sharp time. This is where
I
I've
love
got
your
it.
hair. I love your hair.
Oh, thank you. What a nice thing. I'm actually getting a haircut tomorrow. So this is the tail end of this haircut.
I love it. Hi, Carrie. Great morning to you. So I'm going to let the viewers know a bit about you.
Mhm.
So Mr. Mike Iamele is a purpose plus brand strategist. For nearly a decade, he's helped hundreds of celebrities, influencers, entrepreneurs, artists, and spiritual seekers to map their experiences and figure out what they subconsciously do every time they're successful through a process called sacred branding. People use this work for all kinds of things, from building a successful business around their passions to exploring their sexuality and identity, support around trauma and mental health, to even rediscovering themselves after a life altering event like divorce or retirement. Mike is also the author of Enough Already, Create Success on Your Own Terms. I like that. Wow. So was that published in 2015?
It was published in 2015. Yeah.
Wow. How do you feel
About life, the book.
about the book? Yeah.
Good. I do feel good about that book. It was definitely, I have an interesting
Mhm.
story. So I don't know if you know my story, but basically, I was offered a book deal about 3 months into my business.
Wow.
And so it was a whirlwind to write that book because I had a blog and the
Mhm.
blog was getting a little bit popular. And so a publisher said, can we turn this into a book?
Mm.
I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of people say this, but looking back, what is it now? 6, 7 years ago since I wrote that, I would have written a few things differently at this point in my life. But, I think that's the path of evolution for all of us, is that we're always evolving. And I think what fascinates me most is there are aspects of my work today that are in that book that I didn't even realize. And so much of what I'm doing right now, I already kind of knew without knowing I did.
I can relate to that because last night I wrote a personal essay for grad school. After I submitted it, I'm like, all these thoughts started coming to me what I should have wrote.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me why that is? Do you know?
Yeah, I've heard a few different writers speak about this, and they say, you're never going to get it perfect, right? Like you put some things down, and the process of writing gets the ideas flowing, like it gets a conversation going, which is why I love interviews like this, right? Because all these amazing conversations start going, and now your mind is going. You're like, well, crap, I just turned in that manuscript. And so a well-known author that I know said, Mike, you do make up for all your mistakes. You fix them just in your next book. That's why you write a next book.
Yeah.
And I have yet to write a next book. I haven't sat down and done it. But I think that that's such a beautiful way to think about it. We are always on this evolutionary path. We're always learning and growing, and we can keep producing new stuff. We're not I think people think you write one book and that is it for life, like you are tied to this book, and that's just not true. Every interview I do, every session I do, all the work I do, I'm constantly evolving and growing.
Unless it's a memoir, like Nelson Mandela or something, that's
Sure,
different.
sure.
But, I agree with that because, Rachel Hollis, she wrote, I believe, about 5, but she was saying in her podcast how, like, the first book will always suck. Like, there's friends of mine who wrote books, right, as entrepreneurs, and they feel like it sucks. Like, it could have done better. But it comes with practice, I believe. So do you feel like you'd also become a better writer? Like, you're always evolving in that way as well?
Oh, I definitely. I wrote a blog every single weekday for about 7 years straight. It was a long process. And that alone is just, I've been a writer forever. I've worked in public relations and done a lot of ghostwriting for a lot of different people. And so, yes, I feel like writing is something that practice is always improving it.
Wow. Sounds like you have great discipline. So were you always this brilliant, like since you were young?
Was I always this brilliant? What an interesting
Yeah.
question. I'm happy. Let me tell you a little bit about my backstory because I
Yeah.
think maybe that will contextualize things. So I was pretty, successful early in life. At about 22 years old, I started a public relations agency, and I specialized in healthcare reform. But I worked with a lot of, tech people. We worked with some billionaires. We worked with some celebrities, some healthcare politicians. And then I woke up one day in my mid 20s and I was vomiting blood.
Oh
And you
wow.
can imagine that was pretty terrifying. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I vomited blood every day for about 2 months straight. And I was going to different doctors. I was diagnosed with a few different things. And while this was happening, one of my roommates was on pharmacy residency. So he knew the system. And he was the only roommate who was home ever. And so he really became my de facto caretaker. And he would bring me to appointments. I couldn't drive myself. I actually had an accident at work. I shit my pants at work. It got so bad, so I couldn't leave the house. And he started cooking dinner for me. And long story short, about 2 months into this process, I realized I was developing feelings for him. And it felt a little strange to me because up until this point in my life, I had never been with a man. And to my conscious knowledge, never been interested in a man.
Wow.
And so but to give you some context of what I was feeling at the time, it was kind of like, am I just afraid I'm going to die? And this is a human within proximity. Like I didn't know how to
Right.
react to this or what to think because it was such a unique moment in my life. And I was doing crazy things. Like I was writing handwritten letters to every member of my family saying everything I've never said to them out loud because I just wanted to heal. So I was like trying any therapy I could try. And so I'm at this moment where I have these feelings. They don't feel sexual. They don't feel romantic, but they're feelings. And I thought probably any other point in my life, I'd just brush it under the rug. But I'm scared I'm going to die. I'm trying not to hold things down. I decided I was going to say something to him. And so it took me a little bit. I got up the nerve. I didn't know if I was going to get punched in the face this day or what was to come. But I said, Garrett, I don't know how to say this, but we've gotten close and I feel something here. And it's not romantic necessarily, but it's definitely more than a friendship. And I don't know how to talk about it, but I just feel like I need to be honest.
Wow.
And I'm really grateful that Garrett is probably the most thoughtful person I've ever met in my life. And so he said, like, okay, that's interesting, but let me think about it. Like, I don't know how I feel about this. And so he spent some time thinking about it. And, right now I'm condensing months into a few minutes. So there's a lot more that goes into it. But emails and conversations later, we decided to try to explore a relationship.
Wow.
And it wasn't one that was physical at first. We still dated women as well. It was an open relationship, but we explored that for about a year and a half or 2 years. And then we decided that, this was something that was real and we wanted it to be exclusive. And so all this is going on. I knew I needed to leave my job because if you're vomiting blood, something is wrong here.
Mhm.
So I knew probably I need to do something on the more healing path because I started going to herbalism school and nutrition school and learning, energy healing school and learning a whole bunch of new things. And so while I'm doing all of this stuff, I gave a year's notice of work. I never recommend anyone do that, by the way, but I was an owner of a company, so I felt like, I have to make sure they're in a good spot too. And I went to school full time. It sucked. I navigated this relationship. I was healing myself. It was a bad year. Let me just say that. I get out of this year and I'm like, okay, I'll just be the herbalist to Boston's tech entrepreneurs because I know them. Now I'm an herbalist. I know what it's like to get sick. Let me help these people.
Mm.
And I wasn't making a lot of money. And I kind of thought, well, shit, you gave up a great job. You had a great career. And like, you don't even like what you're doing right now. And so I said, okay, I'm a writer. I've always been a writer, but I've never used my own voice. I've always ghostwritten for other people. I have some stories to tell. Like I was successful at a young age. It wasn't what I was cracked up to be. I want to reevaluate how we think about success in our society. Maybe I can blog about this. And so I started a blog and I started that every weekday. And about 3 months in, I was being asked to write for some publications. Somebody said they had been following me and said, I'm a publisher. Can I give you a book deal? I really like your voice. And so I'm sitting here like, does this happen? Like, okay, you're going to pay me to do what I'm doing? Yeah, okay, I will totally write this book. And so I wrote this book and the publisher was a queer publisher. And she said, I really want you to talk about your relationship. When you're talking about redefining success, I think sexuality and all these things come into that, and sexual fluidity. This is really important. So it's kind of like, okay, it's a little bit of a jump to put this into a book, but okay, I can do it. Because my parents knew, close friends knew, but like not a lot of people knew. We were still figuring this out. And so I put it into the book, I turn in that manuscript, and then I think, oh shit. Like, I have to tell people before they find out on the shelves of Barnes & Noble. Like, I have to tell people I'm in this relationship. People are going to be really upset. And so I thought, all right, Mike, how do you want to do this? Because my thought was like, maximize this. I want to tell as many people as possible without having to like have these really awkward one-on-one conversations. I thought, well, I'm a writer. I have a blog. I'll just blog about it. Not that big of a deal. Tell a few people, they can all talk shit behind my back and then come to me. I don't have to deal with all that, right? Like this felt like the best solution. So I write this blog post. One of the publications I wrote for said, can we pick up this blog post? And I said, well, it's out there, so fine. I go to bed. I wake up the next morning and 100,000 people had shared it. Yeah. It was the single most overwhelming moment of my life to wake up to literally thousands of emails, millions of people talking about your sex life, and missed phone calls from NPR and Huffington Post wanting to ask me about my life. And, you know, I can talk about it now and we can joke about it because it was 7 or 8 years ago, but it was a really traumatic moment, right? Like, obviously my therapist got a phone call ASAP. You know, I had people on all sides accusing me of things and asking me to defend a sexuality that, to be honest with you, I wasn't clear about. And so I'm still trying to figure this out in a very public way. And I'm being asked to like headline talks at Pride. And I was like, I'm not qualified for this. Like, this is not something I asked for or expected to have.
Holy shit.
I'm now at this moment, right, where I've got millions of people talking about me. All these people, like, I'm not even really on social media, and they've just bombarded with people on social media. We had somebody stalking my husband, or my now husband at the time, boyfriend. It was really like crazy situation. But I have a book deal. I've got millions of people talking about me. I have no business model. I'm making no money, and I feel like I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And so it was this complete crisis of like, what the hell is life purpose? I get this idea of branding and public relations. I was always working that, but I don't understand. And I feel like I have failed my purpose 1,000 times. And so I became obsessed with purpose, right? And I started looking into, every webinar, every book, like you name a book, I promise you, I have read that life purpose book. And you do enough of this stuff and you hear the same things over and over again, right? It's kind of like figure out your skills, figure out your passions, figure out what the world needs, find that middle point. So I'm like, okay. Mike, what do these things have in common? Like, what has in common with, viral article and sexuality and getting really sick, vomiting blood and PR and branding? Like, none of this makes sense to me. And then I sat with my whiteboards. I was really working for like weeks on this. And then it clicked. I said, oh my God, it is so obvious. How did I miss this? I meant to create a blogging course. And this blogging course is going to be helping people get book deals, sure. But it's going to be deep and spiritual. It's going to be about like finding your voice, knowing who you are, healing from your wounds. This is it. So I had no money at this point, right? Because, I spent a year. I got a book deal, so I got a little advance. But other than that, I wasn't making much money. And so I said, you know what? Screw it. Like, I will go into debt because this thing is going to take off. I get the fancy lighting kit, the microphone. I got a business partner. I got a web designer. Like, you name it. I've got all this stuff. Put this thing out into the world. I know this is my meal ticket. This is taken off. I think 5 people bought it. It was a colossal failure. I lost thousands of dollars on this thing. And I just said, I am done. I am done. Like, I feel like I went for it this year. I have people ask me invasive questions about my sex life. I have I can't even do an interview without somebody asking me about it. I have, I left my cushy job. I went for love. Like, I've done all the things I thought I went for life. And the world tells me it does not want what I have to offer. And I'm so devastated that I decide I'm quitting. I'm going back to public relations and going to beg my partners to take me back. I don't know if I have a job at my own company, but I'm going to beg them to because I don't have any other way to make income. And I thankfully did one thing that changed my life. And I didn't know at the time that my work would have predicted this. This is what my work is about. But because I'll tell you, one of my sensitivities is successful. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But I decided to host a failure celebration. And my thinking about this really was like, I'm a failure. I am such a failure, but at least I did something that got me to failure, right? Like at least I took a risk, because failure implies risk. It implies doing something. I said, I went for love. I went for honesty and vulnerability. Like, this is something I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to host a failure celebration. And so my failure celebration, I said, well, let me take the one thing I'm still confident in, because it's not much anymore, but the one thing I'm still confident in is public relations and branding. I'm really good at that. And I'm good at kind of mapping people's brands. So I'm going to go into spiritual groups I'm a part of, and I'm just going to offer as many branding sessions as I can do in a day. Like, I think I did 6 sessions, 9 hours. I had to stop sessions to pee, but I don't care. I am going to celebrate and be grateful that I still have this gift. And I want to help people who are doing cool work in the world.
Wow.
And so I do these 6 sessions this day. And it's interesting because I'm used to working with, healthcare politicians or tech billionaires. So very particular people, usually either part of a big company or, working for an organization. And I start working with these people, and a lot of them are like psychics and healers and writers and artists and coaches. And so I'm working with these people. And at the end of each of these 6 sessions, each of them said to me some variation of, Mike, this has nothing to do with my brand. You just explain my life purpose. Like, screw my business. This explains me. And I'm sitting there like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know what you mean. Like, I'm studying life purpose. This is branding. This has nothing to do with life purpose. And they said, but you don't understand. I want my business to be my purpose. What you're really mapping is who I am as a person. And maybe you're not used to working with people like me, but this is what we're talking about. So I get off the last call. I think, what do I have to lose at this point? So I do this on myself, right? I'm like, well, I'm going to try. If people are telling me this purpose, or I want to know my purpose, I'm going to map myself. And so I map this, and I come up with 6 words at the end of this mapping. And the 6 words are aligned, zany, free, unmistakable, successful, and vulnerable. And there was just like this light bulb moment where it's like, oh my God, I have never been safe to be as vulnerable as I am with Garrett. I have never felt like I literally can't make a mistake. I know why I'm in love with him. And in public relations, I can see why I help people to align their messages to be successful, but I couldn't be vulnerable. So I can see where I was successful, but not fulfilled. And it was just like I had this map of like, if I feel these 6 words, I am always successful and fulfilled. And that's what I do anytime subconsciously I'm successful and fulfilled. If I don't feel it, I can see what the problem is. And so I'm sitting here thinking about this, still full intention of leaving my job because I don't know what the hell this means. And I check my email, and I get an email from one of the women I worked with that day. And she said, hey, Mike, my friend wants to buy this. Do you sell this thing? What do you call it? I was like, well, I sell it if you want to pay me. Sure. And so I had like a low price. It wasn't very expensive because I didn't know what this was. And I said, I'll call it, let's see, it's branding, but you're telling me it's life purpose. So I guess it's sacred. I'll call it sacred branding. Just made up that term, didn't know much about it. Put it on there. I had a client the next day. So I'll push off my day to call my partners because every day I'm making money, I will stay here. When I'm not making money, I'll leave. A few weeks later, I had, 10 clients, 30 clients.
Wow.
That was 8 years ago now. So I have not left, fortunately, knock on wood. I haven't had time where I haven't been making money. So I'm still able to do the work I love. And it's really evolved over the years, but it's fundamentally changed the way that I think about life purpose and really helped me to understand that a lot of what we look at as life purpose is actually incredibly toxic, shame-inducing, and really informed by capitalism. And so there's a lot that I've kind of completely revolutionized in the way I do my work.
Well, holy cow. One thing I want to say is, the whole story when you're telling me about your life, it's just so fluid. Like everything happened for you just so beautifully, even though that 1 year was bad for you, meeting Garrett, which is now your husband, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In that situation, like, he was your caregiver. Did you ever find out what that diagnosis really was?
Yeah, people ask me this all the time. So I've been diagnosed with a few things. So I have a few diagnoses, one of which is inflammatory bowel disorder. So like ulcerative colitis. And I still do get flare-ups. I am conscious of my diet. I don't drink alcohol much, or I don't do caffeine. I was also at the time, what was mostly diagnosed with was severe pancreatitis based on my pancreatic enzyme levels, which were sky high. And I also had infections in a few organs. So there were a few different diagnoses. Basically, what I was kind of diagnosed with is something autoimmune. And, it's just kind of like something's going on with your immune system. But yeah, there were a few different concrete diagnoses I got.
Make people find you to be amazing. This is amazing. So I want to ask you, I'm sure you get asked this often, what exactly is mapping sensitivity?
Great question. So here,
Right?
let me start this by
Yeah.
saying what I think purpose isn't. Because most of the time when people say to me, "Hey Mike, I finally know my life purpose. I'm meant to be a life coach. I'm meant to be a
Mhm.
writer." And I always say to them, "That is awesome. I am so so happy for you." But here's the thing. If you can achieve your purpose, that also means you can fail it. And that doesn't make any sense. How could you fail your purpose? And furthermore, if you could achieve your purpose, that means you didn't have it at a certain point. So did you just not have a purpose as a baby? What about your purpose in your relationships or with your trauma or like hanging out with friends or literally anything that's not work? Like, I work with so many people who retire or get laid off and they're like, Mike, I don't have a purpose anymore. I need a new purpose. I was like, no, 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 no. So here's the thing. I want to say two things here. One, I'm always drinking large mason jars of water. Reason being is I love water and I am incredibly lazy. So I don't like filling up water all day long. I want my big cup right next to me. But if I went to a friend's house and they only had small cups, I would still drink out of them because I want the water, right? I don't really care. If it got a crack, I would pour it into a new cup because I want the essence. What I want inside is the water. I don't care about the container. The container is the way I get that essence, right? If you gave me my mason jar with soda, which I don't really drink, I probably wouldn't drink out of it. I don't care about the container. I want the essence. Now, most of us, when we're saying, my purpose is to be a life coach or to be a writer, those are beautiful containers, right? But your purpose isn't that you are a life coach. It's why life coaching feels fulfilling. Purpose means why, right? That's the question we want to answer. So if we go back, I said, as a baby, we had a purpose, but we didn't achieve anything. What did we have as a baby? We had sensitivities, right? We were sensitive to things. Some babies are sensitive to freedom and they feel trapped easily and they just want to get out of that swaddle. Some babies are sensitive to connection and they love looking their moms in the eyes. And here's something really interesting that we can notice. If you're sensitive to something, you literally sense more. You see, taste, touch, smell, hear more there, right? You're going to have more desires around that. You're going to have more wounds around that. You're going to have more, because you're going to have more trauma. You feel things deeper. You notice. If you walk into a room and it's something around connection, you're going to notice it more than anyone. If you're being left out, you're going to notice that more than anyone because you feel it deeper. As you get older, that doesn't change. It just colors your experience of life, right? So as you get older, you are always going to want to make people feel included and connect to people. You're going to feel really bad anytime you are left out. You're going to want to, you're going to be really magnetic when you can be one-on-one with someone because that's where you shine and you see and feel more. And so now it starts to tell you your gifts, your wounds, your trauma, your patterns, all these things are influenced by how we uniquely experience the world. If you want to say, people always say to me, why did this happen to me? And I said, a better question about purpose is why did I experience this? Because I can't say why things come into your life, but I can say why you had the experience you did. And that's according to your sensitivities, what you're most sensitive to. So when I say mapping sensitivities, what I'm really talking about is mapping what you are most sensitive to so I can understand why this worked out but this didn't. Why you like this relationship but not this one. Why this marketing plan worked. Why you were so magnetic here. Why this feels good to you. Why this was traumatic to you. I can understand why you experienced this. And the cool thing is, and this is my cheat sheet, I'll be honest with you, I'll give all my secrets away. It's in every moment of your life. So it's not that hard for me. I've just got to get people. And I have a very, it takes me 2.5 hours when I work one-on-one. So I have a very particular system, but I've just got to get people telling me their stories about life. And we will start to see the same patterns over and over again. And then all I do, and I'll tell you exactly what I do, after I have a formalized way for doing this, a methodical way for doing it, all I do is I create a visualization. I create 3 visualizations to get them to feel what they've described to me and make sure that the feeling they have matches the words that they said. And the reason being is a lot of us will just use words, but we don't actually attach them to the feeling. I want to know that this was your true lived experience. And so I will just spit back the words they already said to me, make sure it matches the feeling. We might have 100 words And then we systematically compact those 100 words to understand what 5 words explain all the others. And that's
Wow.
how I work.
You know, it reminds me of expressive arts. That's the first thing we talked about when I met you. And it reminds me of, like, it's just so therapeutic. So do you call yourself a coach?
I don't use the word coach.
Yeah.
To be perfect. I mean, you're welcome to call me that. I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
I am trained as a coach, so you can
Right.
call me that. But the reason I don't use that word is, to be perfectly honest with you, about 50% of people who work with me never work with me again. So you hire me one time, you know those sensitivities, and you can go off and live an amazing life with those.
Wow.
And then most of the other work I do is group programs. So I'll be honest, right now I have one long-term client, and that's it. I don't work with people very often that way. And so it also just doesn't feel. The reason I also don't use coach is because it doesn't feel as descriptive of what I do, because what I'm really doing is mapping and helping you understand yourself. And you can ask me for support, and I can predict a lot of things about your life. My favorite thing to do is I'll say, I've got my heaven scroll, and if I'm up in heaven, I'm going to predict a few things are going to go happen for you. And people are shocked at how much I'll know about their life. So I can do those things, but I would so much rather you just take it and be able to use it for the rest of your life.
Mike, you're so amazing. It's like such a blessing, like just hearing you talk. It's just fluid. I don't know that word, since you said it, it's just go with the flow. So do you feel, so one of the things that most people have trouble with is getting clients, but for you, you were always abundant in that. Is that correct? Like through your
I mean, I wasn't that year we talked about. I certainly wasn't. You know, I think, and I've had ebbs and flows, right? Like of course, like everybody else. I think that one thing that is really a fundamental tenet of my work is understanding where I naturally shine. And so I'm going to purposely continue trying to show you the way I'm exemplifying my energies or my sensitivities and the ways that I'm talking about them. So for example, you keep saying flow, in the flow, right? For me, in the flow is attached to aligned. And I will say that over and over again. Like for me, I have an exercise every morning. I hold planks for a obscene amount of time because I'm, I don't know, masochistic in that way. But no, what I do is I think about anything that's out of integrity or not in flow in my life, and I hold it and just feel it in my body for 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And I do it 3 times every morning because I want to know what isn't in flow, what doesn't feel like me. You know, here's the thing about flow and abundance, right? When we are having coffee with a best friend, like today, kind of, hours fly by, right? Genius spills out of us. We always give great advice, and we never think like, am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right thing? Am I like giving enough to this conversation? We're just there and we're in the flow. I want all of us to live life like we're having coffee with a best friend. And so I want to be able to systematically unpack, what is it that you're doing there? What's happening there that you can do over there? How can I make an interview feel like you know me really well, even though we've been talking for just a few minutes, right? Like, how can I do that with a client? Now, some people don't like me, and that's awesome. That is their prerogative. Great. But why would I change who I am because you don't like me? If you don't like me, I want you to know that right away. I want you to go find the person that you like, because I want you to have the most healing you possibly can. But I know for the people who do like me, I want to be there and support them. I don't want to hide. I want to show them who I am. So I'm going to be vulnerable. One of my sensitivities, right? Super vulnerable, my story. Zany and weird and crazy, because that's how I create safety for people. And I'll tell you right now, I've worked with some public figures. I work with a lot of people who, obviously, it's very hard to be vulnerable with a stranger when the public knows you a certain way. I will give you my cheat sheet right now. If ever someone doesn't feel safe with me, I get zanier and crazier. I get more vulnerable myself. I go into my sensitivities even deeper, and it creates safety. All of us, we all have a formula for how we allow people to experience us and know us. And here's the truth when you talk about business or abundance. So most entrepreneurs are trying to get buy-in 1,000 times, right? We want people to buy into our website and our podcast and our blog posts and this offering. It's exhausting, right? We are exhausted. But here's the thing. If it's all built on the same brand, that same energy, you only need buy-in one time. Either people resonate or they don't. Like, I don't hang out with my friends and then try to get them to like me every time I hang out with them. Theoretically, they like me once. I keep being myself, and they keep liking me. That's an ideal friendship. I probably wouldn't be friends with people who make me earn their keep every time. So I think that if we think about the same model, it's the same thing. If you get to know me on a podcast, you're like, oh, he's pretty cool. should be the same that you meet me in person, should be the same if you come to my Instagram, my website. If we can build that energy where it's just, I know what I do that gets people, magnetized to me, and I just share that over and over again, theoretically, people should like me. And those who don't do not have to like me. That's wonderful and fantastic. But for me, it creates such a level of ease because the best thing we can do in any given moment is be ourselves. And all we're doing is mapping what does that look like and then trying to implement that everywhere.
Wow. So do you follow Brené Brown?
And I follow nobody on Instagram, but I know Brené Brown. I've read some of her books. So literally follow no.
Yeah, because she talks a lot about vulnerability. So I've seen your photography, and that inspired me to post a old picture of mine that was similar to yours last night. And do you ever get any negative feedback?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah, like, you being in your underwear and showcasing, your sexuality and just like being yourself.
Absolutely. I get negative feedback all the time.
How do you cope with that?
Well, I think that when you have millions of people giving you negative feedback at one point in your life, it does change the way you think about it. I've learned if I ever write an article, and I don't write very often anymore, but if I do not read the comments on that article. Like that is, so there's this interesting phenomenon where the more humanized you are, the less likely people are to be cruel to you. So I noticed that, like, if it was on the article, I'm not a human, I'm just a robot writer, they're going to write nasty stuff. If it's on like a Facebook post, they're going to write less nasty, but pretty nasty stuff. If it's a Facebook message, a little bit less nasty. And if they went and found my email and came to email me, that's the least likely it's going to be nasty because I'm now a human being, right? I'm not just like this image or this object. And I think social media, it's hard because a lot of us forget we're interacting with humans, right? And so for me, part of it's just been recognizing, if it's on social media, I'm going to take that pretty lightly because they're not really interacting with a human, and that's often, not often, it's always their own triggers. If they're actually interacting with me as a person, they're probably going to be less likely to be as triggered because I'm going to contextualize and be a full human being. And I also think about what you said. I'm so grateful. I didn't know this, that you posted the picture, but the inspiration and impact we can make on people. And like, yeah, it sucks. It's really, really hard to get nasty stuff. I'm a sensitive person. So believe me, I got to do my planks. I got to like shake out all that energy that's not mine because I do need that. But I also have come to understand that like me loving myself and helping others to love themselves is so much more important than people saying something nasty to me. And I just feel like for so long, I hated my own body, right? I hated so much about myself. And it's interesting. We want to talk about body. I looked at wedding pictures. So this is years after I've been doing this work. First of all, let me just say, I was doing this work for years helping other people love their bodies, and I did not love mine. So let me first say that because I am by no means perfect. And I remember one day I said, come on, Mike, you do this work to help people. You can do this. And I said to myself, what with my own body would help me to feel vulnerable and zany and free? And I was like, well, duh, because I'm good at mapping other people. I knew this. Dancing naked in front of the mirror. Duh, I'll be vulnerable. I'll be free. I'll be zany. So every day for a year, I made a commitment that while the water was heating up for the shower, I would dance naked. And the only rule, I could dance any way I wanted, but the only rules were I had to keep moving and I couldn't close my eyes. I had to look at myself in the mirror the whole time. I hated it at first, right? I think most of us would think that. I did not like this. I would notice this blemish or this mark or the way this, of course, you see everything. And it probably took me 6 months of really, really hating it, but I started to not mind it. And then it's really interesting. I ended up posting an image on Facebook, pictures of myself nude, but my body completely covered with every word of things I hated about my body. And it was like a really bold, very courageous thing that I did. I felt very vulnerable. And then about 3 months after that, so I've been now doing this for a year straight of dancing naked every day, I hired my first boudoir photographer. And I said, I'm going to go for it. And we focused on me feeling zany and vulnerable and free that photo shoot. I thought nobody's ever going to see these photos. I will never let a soul see these photos, not even my husband. I got them back, and I have never felt that sexy. My mom, I was saying them to my mom, my family. I mean, they're all over the internet now. I don't care who sees those photos because self-love is hard-earned. And when we really earn it and we really, really start to love ourselves, like, screw that. I want everyone in the world to have that feeling. And I am going to work through all my shit, and I still got a lot, but work through all my shit to help others people feel that too.
Wow. Do you feel like you had a mild body dysmorphia? Like
Yeah,
really
I
rough?
think, would it be clinically diagnosed? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But I think that, there's this whole spectrum of, our relationships with our bodies. And I think I didn't have an empowered one.
Mhm.
Growing up, I'm thin. I've always been thin. My body hasn't changed in a, really big way since I was about 14 or 15 years old. So I know that like some people are like, oh my God, I wish I had that. For me, it has felt like a curse. And every time I saw my grandmother, it's the first thing she would say to me, you're too thin, you look terrible. My uncle used to joke about me having an eating disorder, which is not a funny joke. I was very used to people saying things to me all the time. And so it made me feel really insecure and hate my body. And it took a long time for me to learn how to see my body not through the lens of other people's eyes or the media, but through the lens of my own sensitivities. And that's really what I was doing through all that dancing.
Wow. Do you see yourself doing this work for the rest of your life?
Rest of my life. Oh yeah. I tell all the time when people say to me like, oh my God, I want to work with you, but I don't know if I can afford it. I said, listen to me. I will be doing this work until the day I die. Like there is no rush. You need 3 months, 6 months to save up. You do what you need to do. I don't care. I'm here. So yeah, the rest of my life, I'm obsessed with it. It challenges me daily because, right now I'm doing a lot more work with LGBTQ plus men. I get, start working with, niche audiences and specific issues, and it gets really exciting and fun for me. I'm piloting a little bit of work with children, and I would love to do after school programs. And I have some amazing stories about work with children. So it definitely challenges me in a lot of ways. And at least I hope I get to do this every day as long as I can.
And let's just clarify, you don't have a degree in this. This is something you're naturally good at.
Yeah, I don't have there. I mean, I guess I made it up. People always say, like, who did you train under? I mean, I've trained under a lot of people. So certainly, I'm a clinical herbalist. I have a degree in communications and branding. I worked and owned a public relations agency for years. I'm, a health coach, a life coach, energy worker in 1,000 different ways. So I have certification, certainly. But this was something that just kind of came together for me.
That's so amazing, because most people don't have that. They haven't found it yet, or, they're in the wrong places. What's your wisdom on, people who don't know where to narrow down at yet? Actually, including myself.
Yes,
Right?
yes. I totally get it. Well, I think for one, it's changing the way we think about it as rather than I haven't found this one perfect container. Thinking about, I already feel purposeful some places. So what are the clues there? What's really going on there? And that's where we can do mapping. So if you want, I know we probably don't have time today, but I have a basically 10-minute version of mapping that's free on our website. So you can just go to mikeiamele.com/map, M-A-P, and download a worksheet. And there's a little video to go with it to teach you. But basically, it's just helping you to look at some of your life and to start to understand what some patterns are that are going on. Obviously, it's not my 2.5-hour version, but it's the best I can do in 10 minutes. And it does really, really help you. And I say that because for me, I want to do a little analysis of what I do today. Okay, what do? I help people to align their vulnerabilities, their zaniness, the things that make them totally unmistakable to free themselves to be successful as themselves. That's it. So I could take literally 6 words, and that's why these sensitivities are so powerful to me. I mean, some people out there use them as messaging or use them as their tagline. I don't in particular, but I could explain my work that way because it helps me understand I'm obsessed with aligning things. I'm obsessed with mapping and seeing patterns, right? I'm obsessed with vulnerability and really hearing people's stories. I'm obsessed with zaniness, my too much people, my people who don't fit in boxes. I want to know what's unique and unmistakable about you. I want you to feel free to be all of yourself in every place, not just your job. That's not what purpose means, all of the places. And I want you to be wildly successful. And in my definition of success, which is really being yourself, self-acceptance. And so that to me explains my work. And that's why I like sensitivities, because when we know our sensitivities, it's a lot easier to then find containers, right? It's kind of like if I've got boiling hot tea, I can put that anywhere. Put it into plastic, glass, a mug, a cup, I can put it anywhere. And if I choose to put it into cheap plastic, it's probably going to melt and break. Now I could do that, but it's not a very good container. I'm not going to get a lot of tea. So when I know the essence, it's a lot easier to choose the container.
Damn. It's just so good. I do have one question and then we'll wrap it up. So my question is, the clients that you have, not every single person has a business or is building a business. It's just the inner work in themselves as well. So you don't have to be an entrepreneur to work with you. It could be
Not
anyone.
at all. I do find I tend to work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I'd say like 60 to 70%. Quite
Mhm.
frankly, I think people like the business expense aspect that they can expense a session. So that's
Mhm.
helpful. But, I love working with people of all different, ways of being and walks of life. Right now, like I said, I'm doing a group for LGBTQ plus men. And I would say in that group, less than half, maybe less than a third are entrepreneurs. So that definitely does not need to be the case. It's really anybody who wants to understand why. Why did this work, but this didn't? Why am I struggling to love my body? Why did this affect me so much? Why, haven't I met the person I want? And I'll tell you right now, this is my favorite one for date because dating comes up a lot in my work. With dating, as you can imagine, especially the apps today, what I tell people is put those sensitivities loud and proud in your profile, like make it clear who you are. And then if you want, my favorite interview questions I'll do for all the time for people is, I'm kind of a zany guy. Like, how do you, feel about that? Like, what's the craziest thing you do? Or like, I'm really interested in alignment. What does alignment mean to you? I will have people just ask questions to their dating people. I promise you, you will get way less matches. I promise you that. But the matches you get will waste your time a lot less.
I love that. Yes, to be bold and direct from the beginning. That's very important. Wow. Wow. Would you like to share anything else?
Oh God, so many things. It'd keep me on here for 2 more days. I will share things, but I'm just really, really grateful to be here. And one of my favorite closing lines I like to say a lot is, "You never have to try to be yourself. If you're trying, it means you're being somebody else." And I'm not saying we're going to live a life that has no effort whatsoever, but if we use that metaphor of coming out, it's kind of like that. Like, yes, that might be effort, but even that effort is effort to become more of who you are, to make things effortless or more organic in some way. And that's ideally what we all want, right? And so, when we're having coffee with a best friend, we're not trying. We're just showing up and we're doing our thing. And we are the most magnetic when we are just being ourselves. So let's map it, figure out how, and then just do that everywhere.
Wow. Kind of reminds me of school right now, like history class. This was so beautiful. Like, I just love hearing you speak. Would you ever consider doing your own podcast or
Oh
something?
my gosh, this is the third time this week I've been asked this. Okay, okay, okay. One of these days, maybe. Yes. I think that I'm a little intimidated by the work, like in the editing and
Yeah.
the whatever with it. But I love being on podcasts. I absolutely love it. I try to do like 3 a week, so I really, really love
Mhm.
them. And so, yes, I will consider it. And obviously, I hear that universal message coming again and again. So, thank you for being the deliverer of that one.
Thank you. Everyone loved this. This was great. And thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Bye. Have a great day.